All right, Lenny, go ahead.
And with all due respect, no one in this society is above the law. The president is not above the law. He may exercise his legal authority to declassify information on the fly with Russians in a way that he hasn't disclosed to his own members of Congress in this country, telling the Russians more than our own representatives may know about this classified information. But so he can do what he wishes along those lines of declassifying information, but he has to abide by the law. That's very clear. But here's the bottom line. It's not necessarily the information that he disclosed that's the problem. It's the potential source of the information, giving it to the Russians, who may share that with the Iranians, okay, who aren't our friends or the friends of the Israelis, and then also providing sort of a source of information that could sort of potentially the Russians use to compromise that source, because that information is also coming from a source that could give us
officials have said that he didn't know the source when he divulged this information.
But then, if that's the case,
then why did he release it?
If that's the case, how can they ever stop him from doing it again? That sends a chilling message to America's intelligence sharing partners. The President of the United States was unaware that there was any problem with sharing this information with the Russians.
Let's look at a hypothetical situation here. What if a Russian airliner was brought down by a laptop computer and this information was not given to the Russian foreign minister during that meeting, and the Russians found out later that the Americans knew that this potential existed, this threat existed? What happens then?
Well, that would clearly be a potential issue in the US relationship with Russia. Ultimately, questions would be asked of the Israelis, who had not given permission to the Americans to share this intelligence. The rules of intelligence are very clear. The transmitting country authorizes the receiving country to share or not to share. In this case, the transmitting country, the Israelis, had not given the United States permission to share that intelligence. Now, you can certainly argue there's a moral and humanitarian, as the president did on Twitter this morning, duty to tell the Russians what's going on. But you don't make that decision on the fly in the White House. You pick up the phone and you call Benjamin Netanyahu and you say, look, we've learned this from you. I think we really ought to tell the Russians, don't you? It's his call, not Donald Trump's.
So it's a matter of...
Let me just add one thing in here.
Go ahead.
It was public knowledge that the United States was considering banning laptops from all flights from Europe. So it's not like this was some secret bit of information that the Russians couldn't have figured out on their own, that there was something going on that we were learning about this. The problem is not necessarily that bit of information. The problem is potentially disclosing the source, which would compromise intelligence that we need about Syria, that we need about the Middle East, and all of a sudden the Russians know how the Israelis got this information.
But isn't Russia and the United States on the same side when it comes to fighting ISIS?
Maybe, but we don't know that 100% because we don't know all of the things that the Russians have been doing with the Syrian government.
All right, let me get to Megan off there in Las Vegas. Megan, I want you to take a listen to what the former CIA director, Leon Panetta, had to say about what is happening in Washington right now. Let's watch.
There are serious responsibilities that relate to the President of the United States in terms of intelligence and security of this country. And he cannot just, go ahead and reveal classified information without creating some huge problems within the intelligence community in terms of gathering that kind of information. This president has to understand that he cannot just say whatever the hell he wants and expect that it doesn't carry consequences.
Megan, what do you make of that?
Well, I wonder what Leon Panetta had the opinion of when Hillary Clinton was cleared of violating the Espionage Act because James Comey read intent into a statute that never existed, or intent that never existed in a statute. I'll take what Leon Panetta says with a grain of salt. However, who leaked Israel was actually the New York Times. It wasn't Donald Trump. So again, we have a press that is leaking from leakers who are felons out of the intelligence agencies, which we know were compromised, as well as perhaps someone in the White House, one of the aides. There were only 4 people in that room when Russia and Donald Trump met in the Oval Office. And that was McMaster, as well as Tillerson, and 2 other folks and their aides. So the leak radius is very small. And so I don't think it's going to take too long to find out who these leakers are and where they're coming from. But the Barack Obama administration certainly didn't do this administration any favors in the quote-unquote peaceful transition of power, when days before Donald Trump took the office, what President Obama did was expand the intelligence agency's abilities to gather and look at intelligence information that used to only be comprised of just one agency. We now have 16 agencies. So the leaks now can come from any one of those 16 agencies. And this is the problem. And we're going to find the felons if the press has any curiosity, ethical curiosity, in trying to find where these felonies and felons reside.
Right, and I guess if we look at who has access to this information, Simon, I mean, there may have been 4 people in the room, but they are huge staffs behind those 4.
Yes, and with respect, there weren't just 4 people in the room. There was someone else in the room, a Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs photographer, whose pictures of that extraordinary meeting between Donald Trump and the Russian foreign minister quickly went into the public domain, not through any American media outlet, but through none other than the Russian government's news agency, TASS. So let's be absolutely clear that if Donald Trump had wanted to open the doors to that meeting to independent observers of the press, he could have done so, but in fact, the only press photographer present was one working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Moscow.
Yeah, but we don't know whether the photographer was there when this particular discussion
We have no idea, but it's inaccurate saying there were only 4 people in the room at the time. We don't know.
You're trying to be really clear, but you're not basing any of your opinions in fact.
What is the fact,
You want to be really clear, but you have no idea of the clearance. You have no idea truly who is in that room. I can say 4 people from the administration were in that room and their aides.
Simon, go ahead.
Well, I think the bigger point here is that a president who has fulminated for weeks now against people who have leaked information to the press, a media which, in my view, is merely doing its job and is holding the president to account. That is the job of a media in an independent society. Is now in terrible trouble and difficulty because he himself appears to have leaked classified information to the Russian foreign minister. That's a very rhetorically uncomfortable position for him to be in.
Atiba, does the White House have a messaging problem here? Because, you know, we hear something like this happens, then all the staff come out defending the president, and then he undermines them 5 minutes later.
Well, I mean, I'm listening to Megan, and I know Megan is trying to defend the president. But in terms of the facts, in terms of what we keep hearing, it doesn't come across that way. And that's why we are in this situation. The communication staff comes out and says one thing. The president sits down with Lester Holt on Sunday, says a whole different other thing. We keep hearing mixed messages. But we did hear before in during the campaign season that the president said he likes, you know, this type of disorganization. Like he seems to flourish under it. But the questions we keep asking ourselves, was there leaking information? In terms of being above the law, what I guess I wanted to try to impress upon us is this. What Nixon said is true. If the president does it, it's not breaking the law.
Under very different circumstances.
And just very different circumstances. But what we see here is, yes, I mean, are there going to be other countries that are going to be less likely to share intel with us? Or will our intel staff be less inclined to share it with the president?
Isn't that just rhetoric? I mean, if a country says we're not keen to share information with the United States because we don't trust the president, and something goes wrong, the United States is not going to sit by and say, well, you didn't share it with us.
Well, I think that I like to think that we can trust our own intel, right. But there's a whole history in terms of how we are sharing information with other countries. You know, one of the things too that I keep thinking about is that we don't ask the question is, why is it that we're even in this situation? What is it that we keep doing that keeps forcing these situations that we are even afraid to share information with other countries? What is the problem? What are the issues that we have with Russia? What are the issues that we have with the DNC? We keep having these conversations, but we keep having these divisions. Why isn't it that we can't come together? Why is it that we can't have the president share information with the Russians? I'm wondering, did the Russians share any information back with the president?
Politically, Lenny, what does this do?
Well, it's a bit of a pit of a fire right now. You know, it puts Donald Trump on the defensive. It makes and emboldens the Democrats, makes them feel that they can actually push the case against him. I think it'll make some Republicans very nervous because, you know, look, Donald Trump basically campaigned and said Hillary Clinton cannot be trusted with classified information. Hillary Clinton will, go after James Comey because she thinks that he's sort of going after her for these emails. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump is doing the exact same things that he said Hillary Clinton was doing. So
no, he didn't.
So please don't interrupt. And we don't need to get into conspiracies about the Democratic National Committee and all the rest.
I'm not talking about conspiracies.
is that
one moment, Megan. I'll get to you in a moment. Go ahead.
The bottom line is that the real political issue right now is, will the Republican Party continue to enable the behavior of Donald Trump, continue to sort of look the other way while he does all of these things and comes close to sort of violating the standards of what we would expect of the presidency, simply to get their agenda through? I think the issue right now is right on the Republican Party.
Okay, Megan, you got 30 seconds.
Unless somebody finds a private server that Donald Trump created and stored in a bathroom in Colorado and then destroyed 30,000 pieces of email unilaterally that was part of our national archives, then will I hear any outrage from the left? Because that would be exactly what Hillary Clinton did. And James Comey found over 150 classified pieces of email that went through that private server. But that was just extremely careless, according to the Democrats.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. That's for another show.